very far from our very own Dubai College lies a busy intersection. To your left, the gleaming Burj Khalifa reaches out to the sky. To your right, the historic Dubai Creek, where traders have exchanged goods for centuries. And in front of you, a complex network of roads filled with people making countless decisions that will shape their futures. Now, let me ask you a question. When returning home, do you take the fastest route or the one with the best view? Do you choose to negotiate with the shopkeeper at the souk, or do you accept the first price offered? Every day, we navigate a world of choices, weighing risks and rewards and trying to predict how the others might respond to our actions. Now, scale that up. Imagine not just an individual at an intersection, but nations at geopolitical crossroads. How does Saudi Arabia decide its oil production levels? What are the calculations driving Israel's security policies? And of course, when the United Arab Emirates forges diplomatic relationships, what are the factors shaping those decisions? For centuries, we've answered these questions through a lens of history, of culture, of people. We've attributed international relations to the charisma of leaders, to the weight of tradition, and even to the unpredictable state of human affairs. Yet what if I told you there was another lens that was revolutionizing how we view these dynamics, a lens that many of us use in both our professional and our educational lives, and that is mathematics. The very frameworks we learn within our lessons, that is, predictive analysis, data modeling, and so many more, are completely reshaping how nations approach the complex waters of foreign policy. So, within my TEDx talk, we will go through the elegant logic of mathematics and how it is providing insights into one of the most geopolitically complex regions of our time. We will look at how game theory is shaping the delicate dance between the United States and the Middle East, at how network analysis is mapping shifting global alliances, and of course, how data modeling is completely reshaping economic diplomacy through concepts like reciprocal tariffs. So, without further ado, let's begin with our first framework, and that is game theory, or the study of strategic choices between two rational players. So within our lessons, we see this in the form of prisoner's dilemma. However, this is extremely applicable within the actual real world. So let's take an example of the long-standing standoff between Iran and the United States of America. This is textbook prisoner's dilemma. Both sides stand to gain from mutual cooperation. Iran an estimated $30 billion in sanctions relief, and the United States through lower military costs and stable oil prices. Yet, mistrust has led to deflection. Iran through expanding its nuclear program, and the United States through tightening sanctions. So in 2015, when the former foreign minister, Mohammad Javad Zarif, when he outlined his peace vision, this wasn't merely rhetoric. Yet it was a strategic signal, and game theory would be so applicable in allowing analysts to decode the motives behind such moves and then guide policy towards its optimal outcomes. This isn't just abstract math. This is diplomacy in action, and the 2015 Iranian nuclear deal was a strategic attempt to shift both countries from conflict to cooperation. But behind it were models used for trust building, incentivization, and even verification rules. Now let's move on to our next framework, and that is data analysis. Did you know that every day we create over 2.5 quintillion bytes of data? That's enough to cover the Earth 5 times if converted to pennies. So within this ocean of information lies patterns and trends that would allow analysts to identify political instability, emerging conflicts, and even allow them to allocate resources more effectively. So where is this being implemented today? Well, take the UK's Office of Foreign, Commonwealth and Development. They began hiring data scientists alongside their political analysts. Or even right here in the UAE, we are extremely proud to be among just 4 regional headquarters of the United Nations Big Data for Sustainable Development Initiative. What would this look like in the future? Well, imagine analyzing millions of social media posts to gauge public sentiment towards a new policy initiative, or mining trade data to identify hidden economic dependencies, or even using satellite imagery to monitor compliance with environmental agreements. So, speaking of the environment, let's move on to our third framework, and that is network analysis, or the study of systems through its connections. So, traditional diplomacy focuses on one-to-one ties, that is, Saudi Arabia and Iran, Turkey and Russia, the United States and Israel. However, network analysis allows us to see the full dynamic web, where every link defines the other. So, take environmental cooperation. Instead of forming isolated treaties, nations have formed dense, interconnected webs, making it easier to share knowledge and even coordinate policy. So network analysis allows us to map this effectively. Or it can even allow us to identify key influential players within regions like the Middle East, not just by size or power, but also by position. For example, countries like France and Germany, though not regional giants, play a vital role by acting as clusters and bridges, meaning that network analysis could allow us to map our impact effectively. It even allows us to track how these networks evolve. For example, what started off as marine cooperation has even expanded into waste and hazardous material management. Interestingly, treaties on the air and atmosphere lack the top-down approach traditionally used. However, it's far more decentralized and a result far harder to control as well. So by mathematically mapping these webs, essentially what we can do is uncover hidden patterns and opportunities that would otherwise remain invisible to the traditional line of thinking. Now let's see how this is all affecting policy right here and right now, starting with America's gradual pullback from the Middle Eastern region. At the peak of the War on Terror, there were over 250,000 troops stationed across the region. Today, that number is down to just 25,000. This shift wasn't marked by mere guesswork. However, it was a strategic attempt to pull back using network analysis. So, essentially what was going on was that analysts at the Army War College used cost-driven benefit analysis and strategic modeling alongside the retrenchment theory to answer the crucial question, is this the right time for the United States to pull back from the Middle Eastern region? The math looked at several key factors: the United States' global standing, which was strong, its rate of decline, which was very slow, the independence of its Middle Eastern commitments, which was mostly independent, and of course, whether the defense had the upper hand within the region, which it did. Now the results? The numbers were clearly in favor of retrenchment from the region. The reasons behind this were simple. Local powers could now begin to shoulder more and more responsibility. Additionally, US interests within the region were limited and manageable, and the fact that it was defense-oriented made it far harder for rivals to fill in the gap left by the Middle East. Now, we're seeing the impact of this right now due to the fact that the US administration is now focusing more and more on China. Speaking of China, let's move on to our next area where mathematics has truly influenced policy, and that is reciprocal tariffs. So unlike its name, reciprocal tariffs isn't the mere matching of existing tariff rates. However, it's calculated using a simple formula: a country's trade surplus with the United States divided by the goods exported to the US. Now, to say the least, this mathematical approach to economic diplomacy has had several counterintuitive outcomes. Let's take Jordan, which has a free trade agreement with the United States, eliminating most tariffs. Now, what has actually happened here is that Jordan still faces a 20% base tariff rate. Why is that? Well, essentially, Jordan exports far more to the United States than it imports, creating a very high ratio within the formula. Or take Israel, which is the United States' closest ally within the region. It still faces a 17% tariff rate. And that's not even counting the plethora of other countries affected by this approach to diplomacy. That is Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, Turkey, and so many more. The formula's simplicity belies its profound impact. So by conflating two distinct economic concepts and treating them as equivalents, that is, tariffs and trade deficits, this can have several disastrous outcomes for our economic world. Additionally, by focusing solely on goods and excluding services, where the United States excels, it's creating a distorted image of our trade relationships. However, this is still a key area in which mathematics has had a major influence. Now, let's finally move on to security policy, for nowhere is mathematics more important than here, where it turns uncertainty into strategy. Let's begin with network theory, which allows us to track how certain vulnerabilities are interlinked and how fixing one threat can ripple across a system. Especially in an ecosystem like the Middle East, where threats are intrinsically linked, this sort of thinking is absolutely crucial. It allows us to map not only how certain security moves will affect short-term stability, but also long-term sustainability and peace. Now, game theory plays a crucial role as well, especially in regions like the Eastern Mediterranean, where tensions run high over energy, trade borders, and even maritime disputes. So game theory allows us to track win-win strategies that may otherwise remain completely unseen. One thing is clear, as we move into the future, the integrations of mathematics and policy will only deepen. Imagine analyzing millions of diplomatic outcomes within mere seconds. Or even imagine going through centuries' worth of historical data to predict how certain actors might respond to certain policy moves. This is no longer science fiction, yet emerging realities in diplomatic services across the globe. However, with immense power comes great responsibility. Mathematical models are only as good as the data that they are fed. Biased data leads to biased conclusions, and flawed assumptions lead to flawed strategy. So as we move into the future, we must remain vigilant about the limitations of our mathematical models. And yet again, it is my duty to inform us all that mathematics may define how we may take certain actions, but never what those actions are. They may define how to make decisions, but again, never how those decisions are made and what they are. The principles of morality, of justice, of ethos, and of compassion remain firmly within human hands, and that is why mathematics will never replace diplomacy. However, it will assist in creating a powerful synthesis between mathematical precision and human wisdom. The United Arab Emirates, and of course Dubai in particular, will also play a crucial role as we move into the future. As the gateway between the East and the West, where tradition and innovation meet, and as the place where diverse cultures converge, we are a region that is ideally positioned to pioneer this new approach to diplomacy. The future of Middle Eastern policy will be written in many languages: Arabic and Hebrew, Persian and Turkish, French and English. Yet, increasingly, it will be written by one universal language. And those who know this language will have a profound impact in shaping the future. And ladies and gentlemen, that language is mathematics. Thank you for your time.